My name is Anton, last name Button. I've been guarding the Cemetery of Fables for 11 years now. Before this, I worked at the Radical Sector plant. It was a good job, nice and quiet. Then the plant shut down, and I ended up here, basically by accident. I saw an ad in the newspaper. Night watchman wanted, shift work, housing provided. The housing was the main thing. By that time, I had no family and no apartment, so I stayed. When people find out where I work, they usually say one of two things. Either, "Oh, that must be terrifying," or "Sounds peaceful to me." That second one, it's the truth. Most of the time, the cemetery is the quietest place in the city. No cars, no neighbors, no TV blaring through the wall. Just birds and the wind in the trees. Sometimes a ginger cat meows. He's been living here about 6 years. I named him Pumpkin. He eats from my bowl and sleeps wherever he likes. Animals aren't afraid of the cemetery. It's the people who are. Although, people vary. There are those who come at night just to take photos and get a thrill. I chase them off, not just because of the rules, though the rules matter, but because I know there are things here better left undisturbed. It's hard to know where to start when you tell this. It didn't begin with a single event. It gathered like water in a basement. First, it's just damp, then a puddle. Then you're standing knee-deep, wondering how you missed the flood. I'll tell it in order.
The first 2 years? Nothing at all. You walk the grounds, check the gates, sit in the guardhouse, drink tea. In the summer, you read. In the winter, you listen to the radio. Sometimes someone tries to hop the fence. Usually it's lovers looking for a private spot. Fools. Or maybe a homeless person looking for a place to sleep among the grave markers. I don't chase them off roughly. I just tell them it's not allowed. Go to the shelter on Sadovi Street, I say. Some leave, some snap back. No big deal. By the third year, I started noticing I would wake up at the exact same time. 3:47 a.m. Not 3:30, not 4, 3:47. And for no reason at all. No sound, no cold. I just opened my eyes. My heart would sometimes pound harder than it should. I'd stare at the ceiling, lie there, and drift back to sleep. I figured my body had just adjusted. When I lived in a hostel, I had bouts of nighttime waking, so I didn't think much of it. But then, one night, I woke up at 3:47, lying there, and I heard footsteps. Not outside the window, not on the path, but deeper in. On the main alley leading from the gate to the old chapel. The steps were slow, steady, like someone walking along, not in any hurry. Step, 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 pause, step, step. I got up, threw on my jacket, grabbed my flashlight, and stepped outside. Nothing. The alley was empty, the sand barely damp. It was autumn, and it had rained the day before. No tracks, not a single footprint. I walked all the way to the chapel. Empty. I circled around it. Empty. I peered between the rows. Silent. Not a sound. I went back to the booth and lay down. I told myself I'd imagined it.
A week later, 3:47 again. Footsteps. This time closer, right under the booth window, as if someone were pacing the narrow path along the wall. I jumped up, didn't even bother to dress, just ran out in my socks. I burst through the door. Nothing. Just darkness, trees, and silence. And again, not one single footprint in the damp earth. That was the first time I felt real fear. Not panic. I don't panic, it's not in my nature. But that chill, you know? From the nape of your neck all the way down your spine. The realization that something was happening
that I couldn't explain. The next day, I talked to the old watchman, Victor. He'd worked here before me, retired but lived nearby and would drop by. The old man was quiet, grim, and drank a bit, but he wasn't the type to make things up. I told him about the steps. He listened without interrupting, stayed silent for a long time, then said, "Don't go looking." When I asked why, he said, "Just stay in bed, pull up the covers, wait for it to pass." "Why?" I asked. "Because if you see it," he said, "it won't be the same anymore." "What won't be the same?" He stood up, zipped his jacket, and said, "Don't go. It's not for us." Then he left. I saw him 3 more times after that. He always changed the subject whenever I tried to bring it up again. He died 3 years later. Heart failure. We buried him here, in this very cemetery, in the far sector. Sometimes I pass his grave and say hello. I think he'd appreciate that.
The steps became regular, every 2 or 3 weeks, always at 3:47. I stopped going out, just like Victor advised, and that helped, or so it seemed. I'd lie there, listen to them pacing outside or down the alley, and wait. After 15 or 20 minutes, everything would fall silent. I grew accustomed to it, like getting used to a draft in a room. Unpleasant, but not fatal. Then the voices started. The first time was early spring, around March. I was dozing on the couch, not fully asleep, book on my lap. I heard someone talking. 2 voices, a man and a woman. I couldn't make out the words, as if they were talking through several walls. The tone was quiet and steady. No fighting, no shouting, just a conversation. I figured it was neighbors' radio or sound drifting from the street. But the nearest house is 300 meters away, and it was the middle of the night. No, the voices were definitely outside, from the cemetery side. The next time, I looked out the window without opening the door, staring into the dark. I saw nothing, but the voices lasted for maybe 5 minutes before fading away. I started a notebook. I keep it to write down everything strange. Date, time, exactly what happened. Just to have the facts, to see if it was real or if I was losing my mind. I still have that notebook somewhere. I won't show it to you. Not because I'm afraid, but some things are better kept to yourself. The voices were irregular, sometimes once a week, sometimes several nights in a row, then a month of silence. I couldn't tell if they were real sounds or if I was hallucinating. I asked a friend for some equipment. He used to be into amateur audio recording. I set up a microphone outside, hooked it to my computer, and recorded for several nights. I listened to the tapes. On one of them, without a doubt, there were 2 voices, a man and a woman. They were speaking quietly. I couldn't make out the words, but there was one spot I listened to 20 times. The woman's voice says something like, "He's here. He's still here." I deleted the recording. Maybe that was a mistake, but back then, it felt dangerous to keep it. I don't know why. It was just a feeling. I want to tell you about the grave in the 5th row. We have an old plot dating back to the late 40s. People were buried there without much ceremony. Those were the times. Simple markers, some completely rotted away, inscriptions illegible. Relatives almost never come. Some are dead, some moved away, some just don't know. In the 5th row, the 3rd grave from the left, there's one without a name. Just an old wooden cross, leaning a bit. Nothing written on it. No name, no date, no photo. I asked the administration. Nobody knows who's there. The records for that section didn't survive. They said maybe it was a war reburial, or just a homeless person. In those days, they buried all sorts. Anyway, someone brings flowers to this grave.
Every first day of the month, without fail, winter or summer. Real flowers, not artificial. In autumn, chrysanthemums. In summer, simple wildflowers. In winter, too. Though where you get fresh flowers in winter, I have no idea. I tried to find out who it was. I specifically took shifts nearby on the first of the month a few times. Nobody. The flowers would appear while I was looking away, or walking in another section. I never saw who placed them.
One time, this was in January, about 5 years ago, I decided not to leave. I sat on a bench in the next row, bundled up in a sheepskin coat, and waited. 1 hour, 2, 3 hours. By 1 in the morning, it was cold, and I was scared. I was already drifting off. Something changed. I didn't hear or see anything. The air just became different, denser, heavier, like before a thunderstorm, only without the storm. It was January, not a cloud in the sky. I opened my eyes and looked at the nameless grave. Someone was standing there, or rather something, a silhouette, the outline of a person, head, shoulders, body, but blurred, not sharp like a living person in the dark, as if someone had drawn a human shape in smoke, transparent, almost gray. It stood there, staring at the cross. I didn't move. I was afraid to stir, not from fear that it would notice me, but from the feeling that if I moved, something would break. As if I had accidentally stumbled upon something personal and I shouldn't interfere. It stood there for maybe 5 minutes. Then slowly, without any hurry, it turned and looked straight at me. I didn't see a face. Where the face should have been, there was that same gray mist. But I knew it was looking at me. I felt the gaze physically, like heat or cold. We looked at each other for about 10 seconds. Then, it just dissolved. It didn't walk away. It dissipated, like smoke in the wind. And there was no wind. I stood up and walked to the grave. On the cross lay a fresh bouquet of white roses. In January. Fresh white roses on the snow. I didn't remove them. I still don't. Let them stay, whoever they were. Now I'll tell you about the girl. This was in the summer, about 4 years ago. A hot summer, you probably remember. The nights were warm and stuffy. I often left the door to the booth wide open and slept with the window ajar. One such night, I woke up to a sound. Laughter. Childish laughter. Quiet, subdued, as if a child were laughing to herself about something. Such a happy sound. During the day on the street, I wouldn't have noticed it. But here, at night in a cemetery, it made my skin crawl. I went out. The moon was bright, almost full. Visibility was good. On the path between the rows, about 30 meters away, stood a girl, maybe 8 or 9 years old. A white dress, or light-colored, hard to tell in the moonlight. Her hair was down. She was standing there, staring at one of the graves. I called out, "Hey, what are you doing here?" She turned to me. Her face was normal, a living child. Cheeks, nose, eyes, not transparent, not smoky, just a real living girl. Only her expression was adult. Not scared, not surprised. Calm, like someone who knows something you don't. She said, "Hello?" I said, "Hello? How did you get here? Where are your parents?" She said quietly and calmly, "I live here." I said, "No, you can't live here. This is a cemetery. Come on, I'll take you to the gate and we'll call your mom." She smiled, not creepily, just smiled like little children do, and said, "Do you like working here?" I said, "Whether I like it or not doesn't matter.
Answer my question." She said, "You're a good man. You don't disturb the flowers on the graves."
I thought to myself, is she from the family of the cemetery workers? Or the daughter of someone from the funeral home? I don't know. I took a step toward her. She took a step back. I took another. She did the same. She wasn't running away, just keeping her distance. And then she said, completely calmly, as if reporting the weather, "Tonight, a woman in blue will come. Do not open the door for her." I stopped. I asked, "What woman? How do you know?" The girl looked off to the side, then back at me and said, "I have to go." She walked off between the rows into the darkness, where the moonlight couldn't reach. I followed her, moving quickly, almost running. But I swear, she was just walking slowly, not in any hurry, and I couldn't catch her. The distance between us stayed exactly 20 meters. I walk fast, she walks slow. 20 meters. This went on until she rounded the corner of an old crypt in the far corner. I followed her around. Nobody. The crypt is locked with a padlock. I check it once a week. The lock was in place, untouched. There's an open space all around, nowhere to hide. She just left. I went back to the booth and sat down. My hands were shaking a little, so I lit a cigarette. I barely smoke, but I keep a pack for cases like this. Then I remembered what she said. "Woman in blue, don't open the door." I stared at the door. Around 4:47 a.m., it was already getting light when someone knocked. I stood up, went over, and asked through the door, "Who is it?" A woman's voice, quiet, kind of cracked, said, "Open up, please. I'm not well. I need to come in." I said, "Wait, I'll call an ambulance." She said, "No need for an ambulance. Just open up." I looked through the small window on the side of the door. Outside stood a woman, not young, maybe 50 or older, dressed in a blue coat. In the summer heat, wearing a blue winter coat. She stood there looking at the door. I saw her face in profile. Something was wrong with the face. The proportions. I can't explain it any better. She said again, "Open up. I'm not well. Let me in." I didn't open it. I stood by the door for about 40 minutes. She stood outside the whole time and would occasionally ask me to open it in a quiet voice. She didn't shout, she didn't bang, just asked. Then she went silent. I waited another half hour, then looked out. Nobody. Only the morning mist between the trees. And in the distance, birds were beginning to sing. I never found out who it was. Maybe a living woman who really was sick, and I ended up being a jerk who didn't help. Or maybe something else. But I remember that while she stood behind that door, Pumpkin, the cat, crawled under the couch and didn't come out until it was light. And like I said, the cat isn't afraid of anything. After that night, I saw the girl only once more. It was winter, snowy, about 2 years later. I was on my patrol route. I have 3 routes I rotate between. It was about 20 degrees below zero. I was moving fast. She was standing by the far gate, which we don't open in winter. Standing there for an hour, looking through the grate into the cemetery. Still wearing that same white dress in 20-degree frost. I walked up and said, "Hi." She looked at me, recognized me, I'm sure she did, and nodded. I asked, "Aren't you cold?" She said, "No." We stood in silence. Then I asked, I don't know why, it just slipped out, "Who are you?" She said, "I'm Alina." I said, "Alina? Are you buried here?" She was silent for a long time, then said, "I'm not here. I'm there," and pointed off to the side. Not toward the cemetery, but somewhere further, past the horizon, or under the ground. I didn't understand. Then she said, "Thank you for not chasing us away," and left. She just walked along the snowy road past the gate. I watched her go, and in the snow behind her, there were no footprints. Now I'll tell you about the most terrifying night, or one of them. This was in November.
November 5th, I think, or maybe the 7th. I don't remember exactly. 6 years ago. In autumn, we get fog here. Thick, white, impenetrable. It rolls in from the evening, and by midnight you can't see 30 feet in front of you. The flashlight shines, but it's just a white wall. That night, the fog was especially thick. I did my first round at 11 p.m., the second at 1 a.m. I was a bit late for the second one, stopped at a new plot. A young guy had been buried there a few days before, a car accident. Parents had been coming every day, bringing mountains of flowers. I stood there, silent for a while. I didn't know him, but he was young. I went back to the booth, put the kettle on, and then I heard it. It wasn't like the voices I'd heard before. It was a hum. Low, steady, like a massive machine working far away, or like thousands of people speaking all at once, very quietly. So quiet you couldn't make out a single word, just a general noise. The hum came from everywhere, not from one point, but from all sides. From the ground, from the air, from the walls.
Pumpkin jumped onto the windowsill and stared outside. Not down, but up. The fur on his back was standing on end. I instinctively turned off the light in the booth and walked to the window. In the fog, not too close, maybe 50 meters away, on the main alley, lights were moving. Not lanterns, not candles. A pale bluish light. Small, like fireflies, only larger and slower. They floated through the fog, didn't blink, and moved in one direction, toward the chapel. I counted, I don't know, a lot. Maybe 20, maybe 30, maybe more. The fog wouldn't let me see further, and the hum, the very same hum, was coming from them, or through them, or they were the hum. I stood at the window and watched. They floated past slowly. A minute, two. Some drifted quite close to the booth. I saw they weren't just lights. Around each one was a figure, an outline, like that smoky silhouette by the nameless grave, only without a distinct shape, just a little cloud and a light inside. One stopped right in front of the window and hovered. I looked at it, it looked at me. I didn't know if it had anything like eyes, but the feeling of being watched was exactly the same as at the nameless grave. Then it slowly moved on, following the others. The hum grew quieter. The procession was heading to the chapel. The lights faded or dissolved into the fog, one after another. The last light disappeared maybe 20 minutes after it started. Silence. Then Pumpkin got down from the windowsill, went to the couch, and lay down. Like nothing had happened. Animals are amazing creatures. I didn't sleep until morning. I sat and thought. Then I went to the chapel. The door was locked, as always. I opened it. Inside, it was empty. Dust, old candle holders, an icon in the corner. Archangel Michael, who the chapel is named after. Nothing unusual, except for one thing. On the floor in front of the icon, there was a fresh layer of wax, as if many candles had been burning and dripping there. But there were no candles, not a single stub, just wax on the floor. A lot of it. I told this to a priest, a local guy, Father Roman. A good man, smart, no fanaticism. He often comes here for funerals, memorial services, just walks and prays. Sometimes we drink tea together. After he listened to the story about the lights, he was silent for a while, then said, "You know, in folk tradition, in many different cultures, there's a belief that the dead don't leave right away, that they are waiting. Some wait for absolution, some for forgiveness, some just to be remembered." I said, "So that's what they were?" He said, "I don't know, Anton. I won't lie to you. The church says one thing, folk tradition says another, science a third. What you saw with your own eyes, you saw. I wasn't there. I can't judge." I said,
They didn't do me any harm. He said, "Exactly. Remember that." Then he thought and added, "You're probably a good guardian for them, too." I didn't understand what he meant then, but over time, I started to. I'll tell you one more story about a voice. 3 years ago, late autumn, I was patrolling the western sector. There were old Soviet graves there, 50s, well maintained on the whole. Many still have living relatives visiting. I was walking past one grave and heard my voice. Not that someone was calling me, it was my own voice, speaking out loud.
I stopped. It was my voice. I'd recognize it anywhere. I hear it from the inside every day. It was saying something unintelligible, quiet, fast, as if I were talking to myself and someone had recorded it and was now playing it back. I turned toward the grave where the sound was coming from. The photo on the monument. A man about 65, large with a mustache. Died in 98. Last name Button. Victor. My last name is Button. Similar, but not me. The voice fell silent. I stood there, then said out loud, I don't know why, "You're mistaken. I'm not the one." Then I walked on. It never happened again. But since then, I always give that grave a wide berth. Not out of fear, just it's awkward, like walking into someone else's room. I want to tell you about a child who was found in the morning. This was spring, a few years ago. I was doing my morning round, about 6 a.m., just getting light. I was walking through the children's section. We have a small one in the far corner. I always go there last. It's hard there, even after getting used to it. In one of the rows, on the ground in front of a small headstone, under which lies a girl who died at 3 years old, sat a little boy. Alive, about 4 years old, in pajamas. Pajamas with rabbits, blue ones. He was sitting on the ground and saying or singing something quietly. Couldn't make it out. I ran up, grabbed him. He wasn't scared, just looked at me calmly. I said, "Where are you from? How did you get here?" He said, "The little girl." He had a lisp. "She was talking to me." I said, "Who was talking to you?" He pointed to the headstone. I said, "There's nobody there. This is a grave. A little person is sleeping there." He said, "No, she's not sleeping. She was playing with me." I picked him up, took him to the booth, wrapped him in a blanket, and gave him warm tea. It turned out he lived in the house across the street from the cemetery. He'd woken up in the night and wandered out of the apartment. Parents hadn't noticed, they were asleep. He crossed the street and went through a hole in the fence, which I found and patched later. The parents arrived, white as sheets, in a panic. The boy was perfectly healthy, calm, cheerful. While they were dressing him, he kept repeating that he wanted to come back and play with the girl. The parents took him away, talked to a doctor later, decided it was sleepwalking and a child's fantasy. Maybe. I went to that grave later and stood there. A girl named Nastya was buried there. Died at 3 years old in 95. 30 years had passed already. I brought a small toy car, found it in the storage room. One of the visitors had left it on a grave once and forgotten it. I placed it next to the headstone. Thought it would be nice to have something to play with. You know what I've learned in 11 years? I've learned that it's not the dead you should be afraid of. The dead, for the most part, wish you no harm. They just are. They need something. Some need remembrance. Some need presence. Some just need someone to know they were here, that they lived, that they loved someone, and someone loved them.
You need to fear the living, who come here drunk with guitars to break something, who steal metal from the fences, who trample over other people's graves without looking where they're stepping. That is scary, because behind that is an emptiness inside the person. The dead don't have emptiness inside. They have everything they left with, all the burdens, all the pain, all the love. Yes, sometimes it's unpleasant. Sometimes it's scary. But it's not malice. It's just being overwhelmed. I'll tell you about a man who came every night. This lasted for about 3 months, in the autumn, 2 years ago. Every night, between 2 and 3 in the morning, someone would sit on a bench by a fresh grave in the new sector. A male figure, sitting there, looking at the mound. The first time, I walked over, thinking it was a living person mourning. That happens. People come at odd hours. I started to talk to him, but as I walked toward him, he vanished. I got up to the bench. It was empty, but the bench was warm, as if someone had just stood up. I found out who was buried there. A young woman, 32, cancer. The husband was still alive. Children were visiting. I think it was him, the husband, or his image, or something from his grief, his love, so strong that it came here on its own while he was sleeping at home. That happens, I think. Love, like death, doesn't really follow the rules. After 3 months, the visits stopped. I guess he started to let go. One more case. This is quite recent, last autumn. I found an envelope on the path. A white envelope, sealed, no return address. It was lying exactly in the middle of the path, as if someone had placed it there on purpose. I picked it up, held it, wondered whether to open it or not. I opened it.
Inside was a sheet of paper, handwritten in a neat, slightly old-fashioned script. The letters were clear, slanted, like they taught in the old school. The text was short. I memorized it word for word. Anton, thank you for your service. We are well here. Don't be afraid of anything. Dennis. That's it? I don't know any Dennis in this cemetery. I mean, there are lots of Dennises. It's a common name. But who exactly wrote it? I have no idea. The paper was dry, even though it had rained the day before. The ink hadn't blurred. I kept the envelope. It sits in my desk drawer. Sometimes I take it out and look at it. We are well here. I hope that's true. I want to say something important before I continue. I'm not crazy. I know this because I've checked more than once. I went to a doctor and said straight out, "Here is what I see and hear. What's wrong with me?" A psychiatrist, not a GP, examined me and said, "No hallucinations, no disorders of perception, nothing that requires treatment. A healthy man with a healthy nervous system." I look at things just as soberly as you do, maybe even more soberly because I have something to compare it to. I know there's an explanation for much of what I'm telling you. Infrasound, optical effects, will-o'-the-wisps, the result of organic decomposition. Swamp gas. I've read about it, heard the theories. But do you know what I answer to those theories? I answer, the girl in the white dress in January frost, leaving no footprints in the snow. What is that? What kind of gas? A voice recorded on a microphone saying, "He's still here." Is that infrasound? Not everything is explained. The world is more complex than our explanations.
Another story about a photograph. The year before last, a woman came to me. Not young, intelligent, wearing glasses. She came during the day, in the light. She said, "I'm looking for my grandfather's grave. He was buried here in '63. Help me find it." I helped. Found it in the registry, went there, found the grave. A bit neglected, but intact. The woman cried, thanked me. I stepped away to give her some time alone. When she was leaving, she said, "You know, I took a picture of the grave. Can I show you?" I said, "Of course." She took out her phone, found the photo, and showed me. It was a normal photo of a grave. Tombstone, fence, trees. And standing next to the tombstone is a man, elderly, in a jacket. Standing there, looking into the camera. Sharp, real, not smoky. I said, "Were you alone there?" She said, "Yes,
completely alone. I said, "Did you see this man when you were taking the picture?" She looked at the photo, looked for a long time, then said quietly, "That's Grandpa. That's his face." She wasn't upset. On the contrary, she calmed down. She said, "That means he's here. That means everything is all right." She left, looking so calm, even smiling. I thought about it later. For her, it wasn't a terrifying experience. It was a comfort. Maybe that's what it is. Whether it's scary or not depends on how you look at it.
I'll tell you about the strangest thing I ever saw. Not scary, just strange. This was last spring, April, already warm. The first truly warm night. I wasn't sleeping, not because of any alarm, I just couldn't sleep. I was sitting on a bench by the entrance, looking at the stars, and suddenly, I heard music. Quiet, as if an orchestra were playing far away. No, not an orchestra, as if several people were singing without words, just voices, up and down, up and down. Beautiful, truly beautiful. I stood up and followed the sound. I walked for a long time, through the entire central sector, then through the old one. The music neither got closer nor further away, as if the source were moving with me. I stopped in a small clearing between some old linden trees. We have a few pre-war graves there, the slabs completely worn away. I stopped. The music was right there. I stood and listened. For 10 minutes, maybe 15, just stood and listened. Then it died down. I saw nothing. No figures, no lights, just the trees, the slabs, the moon. But you know, it was one of the most beautiful moments of my life. Truly, to stand at night in a cemetery and listen to the dead singing. If they were singing. Maybe it was something else, but I like to think it was them. In the end, I want to tell one more story. It's not about an apparition or voices. It's about a living person. 4 years ago, in winter, I found a woman in the cemetery. She was sitting on a bench, just a coat, no hat, in the freezing cold, sitting there, staring into nothingness. I walked up. She didn't flinch, didn't jump. She just raised her eyes. I asked, "Are you all right?" She said, "No." I said, "You shouldn't sit here at night." She said, "I know." She was silent for a moment, then said, "My daughter is here," and pointed to the grave nearby, a very fresh one. The dirt hadn't even settled yet. I sat down next to her. I didn't say anything, just sat there. She asked, "Isn't it scary to work here?" I said, "No, I'm used to it." She said, "You don't feel them." I said, "Sometimes I do." She was silent for a while, then said, "Good. That means she's not alone." I walked her home. She lived 2 blocks away. We didn't say a word the whole way. I never saw her again, but there were always fresh flowers on her daughter's grave, every week. Living people can be ghosts too, just in the other direction. That's essentially all I wanted to tell you. Not everything, of course. 11 years collects a lot of stuff. But this is the core, the things I remember clearly, that can't be explained by anything simple. People sometimes ask me, "Don't you want to quit this job?" No, I don't. It's quiet here. There's no rush. Here, the important things matter. And besides, someone has to look after them. Those who stayed here, those who didn't leave, or couldn't leave, or don't want to, who walk the alleys at night and talk to those who are no longer there, who glow with a little blue light in the fog. I don't disturb them. They hardly disturb me. We reached an unspoken agreement, without words. I guard the cemetery. They guard me. A fair trade, I think.